Hi everyone. I was hoping to have this video up a little earlier during the week, but we are amidst our Chaitra Navratri, which at this time in spring that we celebrate the 9 nights of the Divine Feminine. And in fact, today is the last day. So wishing all of us who are celebrating a very, very happy Ram Navami, which is considered to be the birthday of Lord Rama. And with that, I actually want to jump into a story for this video. And it is about this astronomer named Robert Williams or Bob Williams, who was the director of the Hubble Science Institute in 1995. And when he was the director, he was inspired to take the 100 hours or the 10 days that he had at his disposal to do whatever he wanted with the Hubble telescope and point it towards that part of the sky where there seemed to be nothing happening. So naturally, his colleagues and teammates all dissuaded him from this idea because it seemed like a waste of time, precious time, that they could have done so many other things with the Hubble telescope. But he followed his intuition and pointed the Hubble telescope to that part of the sky beyond the Milky Way, where there was nothing really seen and looked like there was nothing happening. And what emerged from that experiment is history. One of the main things that came through was the realization that the universe that we thought of that was static was not static at all. And the universe that we look at is an ever expanding, evolving universe. When we are looking back in the context of science, when we are looking back into space, we are looking back into time. And the light that is traveling all the way from our location, bringing in the images of these galaxies, that we're seeing, are not of the way that they looked when we received the image, but of how they appeared billions of years ago. Because light takes time to travel, that long to travel. So for science, it was like penetrating into time and space. That's why this image was named as a Hubble Deep Field. It's known that this image is close to 12 billion light years deep. The realm of Kali. It's the zone of awakening. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, these are known as the outer planets, generational planets. And this is the zone of what I feel and sense as the energy of Kali. The word Kali itself arises from the word Kala, which means time, darkness, death. And of course, both sides of the coin, death and rebirth. As time and space also, as we know, are one. In Hindi, Kala also means, Kal, as we say, is the same word for yesterday and for tomorrow, past and the future. Kali's energy moves us from one way of being, perceiving, and living time, space, mind into another, a complete different paradigm. While enlightenment, at least the way that I'm defining it in this context, take these words very loosely because they mean different things to different people, but enlightenment, the way that I'm defining it here, is instant. It's the instant seeing of our true nature, true self. It does not happen in time because it is not experienced by that aspect of us that lives in and as time. The true self is what we are. We always were and will always be. It is the sudden seeing of that aspect of us, a sudden realization of that I am, beyond the thinking mind, that is awake and is pure awareness. That is prior to the mind that I thought myself to be. This opening, when this happens, one may say, post this opening, or what I call as the seeing, awakening, experientially an unfolding or an unraveling of this awakening process happens. As the personal mind and its beliefs that are embedded, this identity of the personal self imprinted on the body, the more we start living as this timeless awareness, fourth density, we allow for this imprints and the structures and the beliefs that are within us to dissolve. And as we move into this is the space of the unknown, living as the unknown, living from and as awareness, as the now. And naturally, for the known mind, right, the conscious known mind, this is darkness. The realm of this is darkness, is unknown. This realm of Kali is the feminine space. That is how I sense her. It is the subtle, the hidden, ungraspable, beyond the obvious world of the gross that the conscious mind is aware of, but she is the source of it. To move into her zone, what we call as the outer Saturnian zone, it naturally feels, for the familiar conscious mind that we have lived as, very ungrounded experience, like a disillusion. It's like taking a peek, into an abyss of oneself, while the mind believes that it is something outside of it. Right? Because the five senses looks outwards. The nature of the masculine dominant mind is such that it projects outwards. And naturally, the mind, which is so used to living its own rules, its own game, living its own paradigm in the playground, this feels like unsafe ground initially. But the disintegration of this mind itself is true integration of coming into our wholeness. The masculine mind, what it names as renunciation, transcendence, is actually immanence. That's what the feminine knows. That's the paradox of her living. By going inwards, we blossom outwards into more of us. Another way to see this also is, take a look at my Saturn video where I've kind of explained this a little bit, but if we see awareness as the sun and the Saturn as the point which is the play of our third density, the psychological mind play of that identity of the five senses, which is masculine, that's the realm of the thought. Thought is masculine dominant energy. Very easy to sense thought. It's in our face in some ways. But this realm is the realm of the feminine. Feelings. More subtle. So one may say thought is like this concrete ice, and this is when we get fluid. And from beyond Pluto is the being space. Another way to also see this, one may say, is the point from Sun to Saturn, naturally to be the third density, so it's the conscious mind. And then this outer planetary zone of Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, the realm of Kali, to be where she takes us through our subconscious. And then beyond Pluto to be the unconscious mind. That is actually the deeper, expanded parts of us. That is why Pluto, in many ways, is seen as the final frontier of this play of the nature of the mind, senses, beliefs. A call as we deepen into it, where we are so ready to kind of awaken, surrender and awaken, to what lies otherwise as the unconscious or the unknown world. Awakening and seeing a clearer face of this is seeing the Shiva, the unseen aspect. We dive into the depths, living as his unique, ever-evolving potential. This is also relates to the symbolism of Kali beheading, right? Because the masculine dominant senses all here. It's the intellectual knowledge that we move as the memory, as smriti, masculine dominant mind. And this mind lives, by storing information, because that's what it lives, past, future. It follows a life of outside in, outer guidelines, outer morals, outer ethics. It relives and regurgitates the same known knowledge that is already there. Because it's an experience. Again, it's a state of mind. It's an experience that lives as if cut off from its very own source. That's the feminine. That is why we see when we live as this personal mind, we got to recognize it just is. It's nothing personal. There is no personal. It just is. That's why we experience a psychological experience of living our own nature, our comfort zone. Living our own stories. We only speak our own stories. We only see our own nature. And that's why stepping out of the known seems unpredictable, uncertain. The mind is not used to it. It's used to living its own conceptualized world. And if you look at it this way, this is the invitation, the garden, the field that Rumi was inviting us into. Beyond our familiar ways of being and thinking. Kali, this realm really cannot be understood fully by the 3D mind that demands understanding. The only way we can play in this realm is by surrendering. To swim these waters, the mind has to surrender, be in utmost faith and move from the depth as one, sensing into its own, deepening into its own intuition as awareness. Every step stepping into, in many ways, an oblivion. This is the fourth density. Her essence puts the familiar mind that loves order naturally into chaos, because it cannot understand, but it has to move. And this chaos actually is the birthplace, the womb of fresh creativity, the juice of new life. And that the familiar mind has to loosen its desire and insistence of having a foothold. Surrender is the mantra for this space. I don't understand, but I sense deeply and I move with that, as that. So the space of this Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, gas giants, nebulous, no foothold there. This dissolving is coming into our being. That is experienced in this paradoxical fourth density when we go back and look at it as time. this is the space. It's a different paradigm. It's a different context. It's a different way of being, and therefore then perceiving, expressing, living. That's why the third density mind many a times has a tough time understanding. One thing to note about her that in this field, she plays beyond the realm of empirical evidence. The mind that desires empirical evidence, we say this is lived experience. It's the kind of senses that wants proof, justification. Experience of the five sense mind is a very different realm. That's where science plays and has its many, many advantages. But the demand of fitting this intuitive way of living into the typical science, it does not fit into that box. As long as we hold ourselves to the identity of this five sense identity, and what I want to clarify that, as long as we hold the belief that only what I sense in and as these five senses and the proof that I receive is what is reality, we limit ourselves. So this is the space of no insistence, and actually by loosening that completely, not having any insistence in any kind of particular experience, any kind of outcome, any kind of thing, we open ourselves to her world. We meet her. We are her. Kali's energy, nothing is apart from what we are. One consciousness. Kali's mantra, we are not what we think we are. The conceptual mind, that's why the mind of the thinking personal mind cannot lead or live in Kali's realm. In this space, she leads, and she meaning she is us. The three main known planets of the outer solar system. Generally, these three planets, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, are never really taken into any kind of major consideration when we are, making our personal astrological charts. And the reason for that is because they move so slowly, and their orbit around the sun takes such a long time that for it to cover one revolution around the sun is pretty much can be the lifespan of a whole life. For example, Uranus takes about 84 years to go around the sun. Neptune takes 165 years. Pluto takes 248 Earth years. So you can imagine that each planet stays in one sign for the most part of our life. At this point, I also wanted to bring in the way that I see a perspective on the Vedanga Jyotish, right? Beyond the Navagrahas, let's say. Now, the traditional Vedanga Jyotish only covers from Sun till Saturn. I've shared a little bit about that in the Saturn video as well, right? We only talk about that. For many, they take it as if perhaps that the Vedas or the Jyotishes did not know at that point about Uranus or Neptune or Pluto. But I think it's actually the other way around. I mean, if you look at the material that is covered in the Vedas, it has calculations of cycles around the super sun, forget around our solar system. And the depth of knowledge that is there is so deep that it is unimaginable to even think that they would not know about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto that lies immediately in our solar system itself. But the brilliance of the knowledge of Vedas, especially in the written form, I really see. By the time it came into the written form, see, initially, first and foremost, Vedas, I'm going to probably make another video on that. How I see it is that the Vedas is not apart from what we are. Vedas is consciousness. So the way the yoga rishis, yoginis, seers, mystics received this knowledge, as I've shared before, is by being the Shruti and receiving this knowledge. Later, as the consciousness, the state of mind started getting denser, that's the cycle that we were moving through, there was a need to start sharing this knowledge. And it started by doing so verbally. It was, of course, then in a very, very small circle, just with one disciple or few disciples who were pursuing or living this. And eventually, when they really sensed that we, at the collective level, we're going to go through this phase of Kali Yuga, which is, the dense consciousness. It's deepening into the illusion of forgetting what we are. This came through in written form. And at this time, one thing that I see about the Vedas is that they naturally had the sense to know that what mattered was not just sharing of knowledge for the sake of knowledge at some level, but to be shared in the context so that it would be helpful, so that it served the state of mind that received it. And this is such an important thing, right? Because when we share as well, that it be understood by the mind that is receiving it or questioning it. So Vedas were then written in that context. And I see it this way because if you even look at the mantras, right? Because this had me kind of really think about this when I started looking a little bit at the mantras and all these shlokas and all of that is there in the Vedas, and I haven't studied it officially at all. And it would just kind of take me aback when I'd see the language where the mantra language was more about, a God that is above us and that protect me and all of that. And it was such a clear realization for my mind, at least, that is what was needed for the level of state of mind that we were swimming in, lost as the personal mind, psychological mind experience, that is experiencing its unconscious state, being separate from the life that we are, right? So it was set in that context. So I see the Vedanga Jyotish part to be exactly that. The only reason that it looks at information from the sun till the Saturn is because it looks only at the third density. It only looks at that because that is what is relevant for what the state of mind was collectively at that point. In the epic Mahabharata, the sage Ved Vyasa already knew and has mentioned about these three outer planets. He called Uranus Shweta, the greenish-white planet, and he called Neptune the bluish-white planet as Shyama. He also called Pluto as Tikshana or Tivra. He also mentions how at that point they are placed in a certain nakshatra and what their movements were. There was also a 17th century scholar named as Nilakanta Chaturdhara, who has also mentioned about Shweta or Uranus. And he talks about their orbit as the Mahapata, which, is basically the greater orbit. That means it's the orbit of these planets that lie beyond Saturn. So definitely we know that this was known more than 5,000 plus years ago by the rishis and our sages. Of course, we think that Uranus was discovered in 1781. We think Neptune was in 1846. Pluto was in 1930, I believe. But I look at this as this is when the collective as a mass got to know about it. Exactly like the information and the knowledge of the Vedas. And this, the outer experience and the inner in many ways is deeply related, because I see this as when our inner, our subjective awareness also peaks from one state of consciousness, finishing its experiencing of one state of consciousness, moving into the other, naturally all this information becomes available, this knowledge comes into our awareness at the right time. Astrologically, right now, in the Vedic astrology, whoever follow it and have taken into consideration these three planets, they call Uranus as the Harshal, Prajapati, also as Indra or Aruna, and Neptune is named as Varuna, and Pluto is named as Yama. Yama is the name of the god of death. And last but not least, Vedas, and especially the written form that came forth, is specifically for the third density body-mind-world experience and that identity. The aim of the Vedas, which I really believe is of the rishis who wrote this, the ending of the Vedas is Vedanta, the higher knowledge, the outer knowledge that is meant to wake us up to our truer identity of being higher knowledge itself. From smriti, memory, living a body-mind world that lives as conditions, as an outer time and space, past, present, and waking up into our awakened true self-identity. I am higher knowledge. And this is what I see as the invitation at this time, and that's where my interest lies, is to living it as what they've mentioned as Shruti, which is pure intuition. All outer knowledge, all of the forms of the outer world, that's why anything that comes into form is simply a pointer. They're symbols, portals, through which we arrive to the realization of what we are. And of course, as this subjective awareness of a self, we each do this very uniquely in our own way. Each perspective is unique. And the invitation of this time truly is to walk this as intuition itself. That's the age of Aquarius. Vedas end with Vedanta, inviting us to move from the fragmented way of living of this is me and things lie outside of me, and becoming one. The jnana and bhakti, thought and feeling becoming one, mind and heart, and living as the being state, awareness. And this is Kali. She is the one who experiences living as time, and she paradoxically is the one who is waking up, one may say, the energy into this fourth density, knowing that I am the creator of time and space, mind, world. As Shiva, she is the feminine aspect of the God mind. So at an outer level, this is why activities that happen in this outer planet zone can actually point towards major changes in themes and identities, especially when they arrive into our collective awareness. That's why this is a time of transformation when Pluto arrives into Aquarius, the awakening into a complete new mind and paradigm. Not just at the individual level, because it's the same individual, that's happening at the collective level as well, collective transformation. It's the evolution of our state of mind that was vibrating at the third density, waking up into fourth densities. So speaking in context, that's why just sharing about Pluto coming into Aquarius does not offer us a full picture. We had to bring in the role of Uranus and Neptune and that are in the same plane where Pluto lies. And that's why these are called as generational or the extra Saturnine planets, because their movements point to shifts in paradigm, shifts in lives, our way of being and living, in shift in the state of mind itself. Right now, as we know in 2023, we are moving through, at this point, we can look at it as a karmic gate. We are at a collective level, clearing a collective agreement of having an experience of the third density and then moving into fourth density. This awakening is a new world that is coming into our conscious awareness. And one of the key points that I want to mention here is the invitation, that's why, is to take a stand in some ways. To stand for what we are sensing within at whatever level. Because this is very key. Because nothing comes outside in. Everything that we are going to experience, live, arises from the I identity. I am reality. At one sense, there's really nothing to do. It's already happening. And to just observe the transformation that is taking place, being as aware as possible. We are already consciousness. So we align ourselves in this play to the highest possibility. The invitation is to, what is it that we sense deep within? To see it, to eat it, to speak it, to share it. And of course, this is a deeply intuitive journey. So each one of us is going to bring our unique flavor to share that. Nobody from outside can really tell us how this needs to be walked. Pointers can be extremely helpful and guidelines and ways of co-creating, a joyful way of coming together. But at the end, we walk our path. Moving into Uranus right now, the first planet, which is called as the Awakener, Liberator, Enlightener. When we are playing in the third density psychological mind, we can say Uranian energy, if you look at it, it's all sudden. So it's stepping into this space which seems unpredictable. Uranus is the first step into this critical shift. A lot about its form itself informs us about its nature of this transformational shift that it offers. Talk about immediate, when we step into this, it's the mind stepping into this sudden realization of this unknown space from its warm and cozy and comfortable identity that it's familiar with. Also, the way that this planet revolves. The tilt of Uranus is like at 97 degrees. It's tilted. and it moves like a bowling ball. So the poles of the Uranus actually get the direct sunlight. Talking about it, its moon, one of its moon also moves in a different direction. It's got about 27 known moons. So this is the nature of Uranus. Sudden, unpredictable, and also that when they were trying to predict the orbit, the way that Uranus moves around the sun, the scientists couldn't predict it. And that is how actually they discovered Neptune, because they realized there was an effect of another powerful planet that was pulling and having an effect on Uranus's orbit. If you also look at Uranus, even though they are all gas giants, right? So this realm is of the gas giant, the unknown, the nebulous, the feminine. And they noticed that for Uranus, the outer shell is of the gases, but beyond that, it's actually an ocean that is liquid. The Uranian nature that's why known to be unpredictable. It plays beyond the understanding of a typical familiar mind that plays in duality. It's sudden, it marches to its own beat. It's all about spontaneity. Its movements seem uncertain to the mind. It lives in the timeless zone of the I am. So the first step of awakening, in one way we may say, is one of the key factors, which is the Uranian energy, is the sudden happening without any kind of expectation. It's exactly like when we awaken to our true self. It's not something we can prepare for, although there are practices that are available that can be helpful, but it's not like doing 100 asanas or meditating will make it happen. There may be a monk who's meditated for a long time, who might not, and somebody else who hasn't at all may. So that's why they call the awakening true self to be grace. But this is only at the relative level. I want to name that, because at the level of the absolute consciousness, we are already everything. So this is not about attaining anything, and especially not the way the five senses sees or senses this as understanding or gaining this knowledge from outside. It is what we already are, whether we are aware of it or not, whether the mind that we are identified with is aware of it or not. There is no sense of, because I have these conversations many times, that when you awaken, there's no sense of deservability or worthiness or earning this, because it does not play in that realm. It is just a happening of each soul awakening at the right time. That's why many times they put it as it's a matter of grace in that sense. But at this time, the way that I see it is with Pluto coming into Aquarius, especially kind of sensing into this, that the collective right now is shifting into this really accelerated state of awakening. We are all remembering from our forgetfulness of what we are into the deeper aspect of us as soul. Uranus is also the higher octave, they say, of Mercury, and Mercury is all about communication, expression. So our way of being, our way of living, and even expressing will change. Our language will change, a different way of expressing in and as the soul. That's the new paradigm, moving as the true self. Neptune, Varuna. Neptune energy is all about higher intelligence, higher love. Venus's energy, if we look at the third density, it's all about personal love and the beauty that is admired by the senses. Neptune is seen as the unconditional love that sees beyond what is obvious. Neptune also invites us and signifies, dreams, our illusions, our imagination, mysticism, spiritualism. It's a very invitation into our sensitive space. When it's vibrating at a lower level, when it's unconscious, they also say it shows up as delusion, things like that. I see it as this subconscious space. Neptune's energy is that which invites us to play directly with our blueprint that is in our subconscious level. Playing here with our dreams, as we know, with our lucid dreams and all of that, it's a space of pure creativity. For me personally, Neptune energy connects deeply with the energy of possibility. It invites us to dream big, right? Because Neptune energy dissolves any kind of these concrete boundaries and walls. So it invites, this is a time truly that invites us to kind of hold the beliefs of our masculine intellectual mind a little loosely. Not to hold a hard border between what we think is real, unreal, dream, fantasy. Because the world that is born at some point was simply an idea in someone's head or a group of people who held this idea. We know that this, when we hold and we stay in this space, even when the ground below us shakes, we can bring forth creative solutions, or more accurately, as the true self, know that we are the space where the solution already lives. Neptune is the god of the seas. Varuna again, it's about the celestial waters. It's all an invitation to become fluid, dissolving all the old unserving beliefs and the structures, inner, outer, same, and becoming flow, fourth density mind. Pluto, Yama, the god of death. March 23rd, after being in Capricorn for about a decade and a half, Pluto entered Aquarius and will be in Aquarius for 20 years till about 2044. Pluto in Aquarius is literally a reality world transformational event. Last time Pluto was in Aquarius was in the 1700s, revolutionary times. But of course, the nature of mind is ever changing. So the nature of the mind, nature of consciousness that was present at that time is very different from what it is at this point. So it's like we are moving through these cycles, right? It feels like we arrive at the same point again, but we live it in a very different way. So at this point again, we will experience the revolution in a very different way. The consciousness, the nature of the mind in the 1700s, that was the mind that thought that the world was flat, right? How do we know what the nature of mind or senses at that point really lived, what they saw? And their solutions were born from that state of consciousness, how they were evolving. At this point, it's going to be different. And that is what we are really co-creating. And so Pluto being in Aquarius especially, it's all about the people. It's all about the collective. We know that the Aquarian energy, age of Aquarius, is all about freedom, liberation, humanitarianism, free will, uniqueness. So all these aspects are going to come into place. I also want to mention at this point that we are at the tail end, because even as I mentioned before, Jupiter and Chiron are in conjunction. So that's playing the tail end of the healing that has so much of it that has already happened as we move into the new space. So Pluto really is all about a symbol for us that we're standing at the leading edge. And we're going to move into a new way of being and doing. That really, honestly, from what I see and sense, is not something the mind that we are familiar with can really even know. Like how life was in the 1700s, we really will not know that for sure. But they did not lead, or they could not imagine the lives that we live today. So we're moving into a time where we're going to create a world, live a world, and create structures, we want to put it that way, inner, outer, however, in a very different way. It's going to be co-creative. I really believe that the invitation is for each of us to create new ways of exchanging the gifts, bringing forth the gifts that we have that are unique to us, and that will be the medium through which we support each other and live our lives. I also want to mention that Pluto at this time is arriving, in the Uttarayana phase. And I don't see that as a coincidence as well, because Uttarayana is the phase when our body, after all the cleansing, is at that point when it is the most aware and strongest and can bring into fruition the creation of the world that we are. If there's one word that Pluto would be for me again, is sovereignty. Pluto at this time truly is this phase that we are moving in with. Pluto is asking us an invitation to deepen into again our Swadharma. This seems to be the theme for me for all these planets coming into alignment, to recognize that it's not about knowing that we are one, that is this boundaryless one, but it's actually intuitively moving. And this intuitive moving itself creates its own flexible, intuitive boundaries, knowing that everything is interconnected. This is a collective shift in awareness. Very, very exciting times, and I really feel we came in here at this time. We are present, conscious, aware in this frequency at this transitional time, because it's a new way of experiencing. At the level of consciousness, there is no time. Everything is eternal now. So I see with this Pluto being in Aquarius, where the veil is thinning, and we're able to peek through into our original true nature. Pluto coming in is this wave that we've been moving through, peaking and taking new shape. So it'll be an accelerated time of new discoveries, new experience unlike what we have experienced before. Our definition of terrestrial itself is going to change. What we think as extraterrestrial will become commonplace for us. This is the gift of Pluto in Aquarius. Activating Kali. Darkness, nighttime, is the time of the feminine. She is hidden, subtle, ungraspable, undefinable, unseen often, but the very source that supports and feeds what is seen. She is Shiva's unpotential feminine face in this realm of Shakti. Nighttime can be a very powerful way for us to access and connect with this deeper aspect of our energy. It's the very reason in Tantra, a lot of these practices are done in the middle of the night. And one may call that's why a lot of these practices that are also shrouded in secrecy. A couple of practices that we can do, if it resonates, is to use, they're very simple, to use the nighttime more consciously. You know, when we live in the third density, personal mind, body mind, that's why we had guidelines in yoga such as, sleep on time when the sun sets, and then wake up at the crack of dawn when the sun comes up. Because the conscious known mind that is so active and in part, for the most part, is an energy that is in resistance to life itself. It gets drained. So when it sleeps in the night, it truly kind of releases, and then there is that sense of ease coming into its true self and wakes up refreshed. But as the true self, when we move, when we awaken and we move into this fourth density, it's an invitation to, again, not follow the outer, but sense into it, because the consciousness, the way that it flows is an ebb and flow, has its own unique rhythm. We might need to sleep in the afternoon, we might need to stay up, or it might wake us up in the night, kind of to move to that rhythm. The liminal times and spaces that we find ourselves in through our day are also extremely potent. For example, in our yogic practices, we have this word called Sandhya time, which is, the dawn and dusk, when night becomes into day, daylight, light becomes into dark. These hours can be purely transformational practices done at this time. It's almost like a birthing, right? Like consciousness that is born from the darkness of the womb of a mother coming into light. And it's the same with the breath, our breath as well. The point that the pauses between inhalation and exhalation. In Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, where Devi asks Shiva in doubt, share with me the secrets of self-realization. This Tantra shares 112 secrets about awakening, and all related with the breath. When we connect to the breath in this way, it opens us that portal so we can awaken to deeper aspects of ourselves. And last but not least that I want to mention is that experience, change, transformation happens to us at different levels. Most of it which the conscious mind is not even aware of. Transformation is already happening. And so using these minutes and moments to be in our true self and celebrating the already awakened body, mind, world, our true nature, which we already are, always were, and will be. To a beautiful day, much, much love.